Welcome back to Power and Politics. The MTA is feeling the pinch from the governor's congestion pricing plan pause. Transit authority leaders say much-needed upgrades to LIRR cars are now going to be delayed. Instead, older equipment will be maintained. The MTA says that's going to cost the agency $20 million. Meanwhile, the LIRR is doubling the number of direct morning trains to Penn Station. Changes are also coming to every line except Montauk and Port Washington. We're told new timetables will increase off-peak service to Penn. These changes take effect September 3rd. Joining us right now with more on this is MTA Board member Sammy Chu. Sammy, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Rich.
So a lot to talk about here. The MTA having to make some changes on the fly. What's your reaction to the overall plan laid out by the MTA chair this past week?
So on the budget? So as far as the budget goes, I think there's some misunderstanding of what we're actually contemplating. I mean, it's been well reported. Everyone's aware that there was a pause put on congestion pricing. And the revenue for that, the expected revenue for that was a big part of our planning forward. Now, we have to take into account every scenario. So the process, what we essentially had this week at the MTA Board meeting was our, financial projections. This was information for the board to understand what could potentially be contemplated when we finally do have to pass a budget. These are numbers that account for many different scenarios. So what ultimately comes before us in a budget may be very, very different than what we contemplated. It's a very important part of the process. It's a process that I had the fortune of being part of last year that helped us avoid a budget crisis because we were able to effectively communicate with the legislature and the governor, who came through in a big way for us to make sure that we essentially were in position to have flat budgets throughout over the next 5 years. So this was not representative of what the expectation will be when the final budget comes out. Obviously, the congestion pricing pause, required a whole new set of contemplations, but, the governor has committed to make sure that the money will be there. And she was there, the legislature was there for us last year, and we don't have a reason to expect that that won't be the case. But we have to plan for all scenarios as fiduciaries to the agency.
So when we're talking about maintaining existing equipment, are we looking at a situation where LIRR riders are going to be on train cars that are really outdated at this point?
I think everyone's familiar. Everyone who rides the system regularly knows that you can get a range of different cars. It's very much our the agency's desire and intention to make sure that we upgrade the fleet in the most efficient and effective way possible for several reasons. Obviously, the customer experience is always paramount in everyone's consideration, but also the maintenance costs. And I think that's what you saw reflected in those numbers we went over. We have the newer cars, operate several hundred thousands more miles without expected downtime compared to older cars. So it's just normal consideration of value propositions versus upgrading versus maintaining older fleet. And we need more rolling stock. As you know, we recently opened up what amounted to the largest infrastructure project in Grand Central Madison in a generation. So we definitely want more rolling stock to add more service.
MTA chair said this week that ridership is up, and he said he's hoping that it continues to increase, and a lot of the measures that he'd like the board to take will push forward that timeline and getting people back on the railroad. Is that what you're seeing, and what do you think that means for the overall health of the LIRR in particular?
I think we're seeing a lot of confidence. I think some of it is obviously things beyond our control, which there are many externalities we have to respond to and account for, and that's workplace requirements. I think more businesses are now settling into practices that are bringing workers back to the office more. We're also seeing very good weekend numbers, which tells us that people are also gaining confidence and using the system more on the weekends for recreation, which we're very happy about. But I think it speaks to a lot of things. I think it speaks to people becoming more comfortable using the system, making use of Grand Central Madison, becoming more comfortable. In the beginning, obviously, when there was disruptions in certain people's trains, even if it was a minute out of sync, there were always going to be people who didn't like their routine disrupted. But I think now people have embraced the fact that they have this very significant and beneficial alternative in Grand Central Madison, and we've seen that reflected in the breakdown for ridership. And I think people are feeling safe on the system. And some of the ridership number is the fact that we have been making some progress on on fare evasion, which I know is a big topic that everyone is talking about, and it's something that we take extremely seriously.
People are just infuriated by that, and at this point, when we're talking about trying to finding funding streams, look, it's not going to make up for congestion pricing, but every ticket counts, really.
Every ticket counts, and I think what people, it was actually one of our fellow board members, Jerry Bringman, brought it up last meeting. Fare evasion might even be too soft. It's stealing, right? It's theft of service. If hardworking people are paying hard-earned money for a fare, then everyone should be paying that fare. So it's not just getting a free ride. You're essentially, ensuring that someone else is going to have to pick up that tab for you. So measures have been put into place. Beginning of this year, a greater police presence was on, has been on the system, and new policies I think have really been effective on a number of counts. I think the MTA police is working in greater coordination with the railroad than they ever have before to make sure that not only are people paying their fares with new policies in place, where now we used to have this outdated IOU system that we had a very, very poor recapture rate on those fares. And now people are actually being brought off the trains when they are not paying the fare, so they're not delaying the paying riders, and they're also putting in law enforcement hands dealing with that situation rather than a conductor who's a civilian employee, which I think is a win-win for everybody all around.
Certainly better safety for the workplace, for the conductor, and for those customers as well. Sammy Chu, thanks so much. Keep us updated in the process as we move forward.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks for having me.
And still to come here on Power and Politics, a new bipartisan bill is shining light on the mental health of our first responders, how the legislation looks to fix the issue as a greater number of public heroes face mental challenges. Stay with us.